Glory, glory. Hallelujah. Since I laid my burdens down. Glory, glory. Come on, y'all. Hallelujah. Since I laid my burdens down. Glory, glory. Hallelujah. Since I laid my burdens down. All right. This is love. That's good? All right. We're invoked. Thank you, guys.
This will take a minute, but I want y'all to stand up real quick. Stand up. So, by day, my name is Samantha Master, and I'm the Youth and Campus Engagement Manager here at HRC. And by night, I'm a member of the Black Youth Project 100, and we believe in chanting. So I'm just going to ask y'all to chant with me for just a little bit, for a minute. When I say, come on, my people, all my righteous people, all my African people, get free, live free, be free, truly. Hey, come on, my people. All my righteous people. All my African people. Get free, live free, be free, truly. Hey! I'd like to welcome you here on behalf of the Human Rights Campaign. We are so excited to have you here today. Myself and my wonderful colleague, Mr. Noel Gordon, would just like to welcome you into our space. Our wonderful executive team, Hayden Mora. And just a quick housekeeping note, there are restrooms. We're going to use them as gender neutral on either side of this white wall.
Yeah, I just want to welcome you all on behalf of HRC, the HRC People of Color, ERG, and the executive team to HRC. I can't describe how amazing it is to see so many people who look like me and come from similar backgrounds to me reflected in one space. So thank you all for sharing this space with us, and I hope it's the first of many spaces to come. So thank you.
Y'all look beautiful tonight. My name is Darnell Moore, and I'm the co-founder of You Belong with Wade Davis. Wade, raise your hand. And we are so excited to see all of you here today looking as stunning and beautiful and black as ever. And it's a marvelous sight. I want to just welcome you into this space. This space is about black love. It is about us talking about the ways in which we accept boldly one another. And we want to open up by inviting a special guest of ours into conversation. We're inviting him up now because he has to go back on a flight. This brother traveled with us on train just to do this, to be here with you all today. So can we please give E.J. Johnson a wonderful round of applause and welcome him up here? So for a moment, I'm going to play Oprah. Me and EJ, we had a good conversation on the way here, and he has to go back on an airplane. Talk to us about your experience. I don't say coming out, I say inviting in. So talk to us about that invitational moment you had with your parents, with your loved ones. What was that like for you, and how did they respond?
Hi, everyone. How you doing? I was really fortunate, I guess, in that situation because, they definitely welcomed me with open arms, and love and accepted me, and nothing changed. And I was really, fortunate enough to get that, and that is really, it was able to shape me into, the person I've become today. And to be honest, I don't know where I'd be if they had, cast me aside or, continued not to love me the way they always had. And yeah, I mean, it was around the time when I was 17, so obviously it was a very vulnerable age, and then obviously, they had to have time to think about it, and I had to have time to think about it too, and what did it mean moving forward, and, kind of thought about the person that I wanted to become and what would be next. And so it was kind of a big moment for the both of us, for my parents and I. But, in the end, we love each other nonetheless, and I feel definitely a lot closer to my parents now than ever before, and so, yeah.
What about your relationship to your sister?
My sister and I have always been close. We hated each other when we were little. And we used to, beat up on each other. But, that's just siblings. But as we grew older, we became closer and closer and found, more and stuff in common. And she's literally one of my best friends. And, we are just always close. And she used to, run around the house and be like, I know you like boys. And I was like, that is not true. And then she'd be like, yeah, I saw those Barbie dolls under your bed. And I was like, okay, well, can't hide that. But yeah, we've always been close, and she, obviously was the first person to call me out, call my bluff, and knew, who I was from a very young age. So our relationship has never changed or faltered.
Thank you. So we're here gathered under this sort of theme of Black LGBT affirming love, beyond your family and your sister, your parents and your sister. How have you experienced love in the community, in the various Black communities in which you've been part?
I think that I always tell, people who are coming out and who don't have the support of their families that, you need to find that love somewhere and have that sense of community. And for me, it was also found in my friends. One of my best friends is sitting over there. Hi, Michael. We've been friends since we were babies. You have those people who you can always, call and talk to, and they give you the love and the support you need. I mean, luckily I have both, friends and family to support me when I need that. But if you don't, I really think that that's where you need to find that love. As far as from the other community, I just, have loved to receive love from fans and various people who are, wish me well on the way. And then I also, love to receive the hate because it just makes me stronger.
Yes. Last question before we let you go.
Unbothered.
Perched and unbothered. Sitting. So, it is true. One of the things that we didn't want to do is to have this space and act like we don't encounter real shit. That everyone does not have the privilege of talking about acceptance and love and all of this other thing, all of these other things that can sound very Pollyannic.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just talk about how then do you push through the challenges that you've also faced, either in the past or in your present?
I actually really thought a lot about that, and a lot of people ask me, where do your confidence come from? Like, how do you just, keep going? And to be honest, I just don't care. I just don't care about the rest. And I think you just can't care about the hate and the judgments and all of the rest. And the minute you let that go, you can, fly past and, become the best you can be. And, it really doesn't matter whether you face, whether it's homophobia or anything else. Even I tell my sister that she, suffers from issues of reading, Instagram comments and Twitter comments, and she's all about that. And I tell her all the time, I'm like,
Those treacherous comments.
that's where,
Don't read the comments, y'all.
that's where you're wrong. And you just have to find that power within yourself and not worry about, all the rest, and just keep moving forward. I mean, it's really just number one. You just can't give a fuck about, the people, the ignorance. You just can't.
Well, we really appreciate you being here and all of your fabulosity, and
you
wish
for
you
having
safe
me.
travels back, and encourage all of us to follow and support EJ, and to support all those young people who don't have the option. They want to not give a fuck, but some can't. Some just have to, because it's a matter of life and death. So let's support EJ and all of our young people, our young Black, queer, and trans folk, wherever they're coming from. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having
Continue
me.
to be beautiful. So we're going to move into a clip of a film called Blackbird. We're so glad to have Patrick Iampok here with us. And let me welcome up my co-host for today, Aisha Moody
Hey,
Mills.
what's up, y'all?
So we're going to introduce Patrick, have him come up for a second just to show his face and his wonderful hat.
Hello. Hi,
So-
everyone.
Tell us a little bit about the film, and we'll screen, and then we'll come back and say a little bit more.
Well, Blackbird, you know, I grew up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I went to college in Boston. So, you know, if you can imagine a young, shy, gangly 16-year-old schlepping into Harvard Square and going to the big co-op bookstore. And I was amazed to see that they had a shelf, gay and lesbian. I'd never seen anything like this in my life. And of all the books that I kind of scanned, there was one book I could tell had an illustration of a black person on the spine. And so I pulled that book out, and it was called Blackbird by Larry Duplichan. And it's an amazing coming-of-age story about this black kid and his family in this predominantly white small town in suburban California in the 70s. And I read this book, and it was just magical. He was a singer. He loved performing and acting, and he was very religious. He believed in the word, and he sang in the choir. And he was gay. And that book changed my life. And I had already decided, you know, by junior high school that I was going to be a filmmaker. But when I read that book, I decided that I was going to make it into a film one day. I think I wrote the first draft of the script in 1991. And it kind of sat on the shelf for years, and I'd pick it up here and there. I tried to make it some years ago, maybe 8 years ago, with the Empire's Jussie Smollett playing the lead. And the financing fell through. Jussie would later star in my film, The Skinny, which is everywhere. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And then we finally got Blackbird made. We shot it in 2013 in my hometown of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And we did the film festival circuit last year. And the movie will be in theaters April 24th. So you'll get to see it then.
Jesus in my heart.
Are you getting bored with God?
What?
I understand.
That you gotta follow your gut, son, and be your own man.
Tell me, do you want to be normal?
Mom, I'm sorry.
And don't you tell me you sorry when you're not. And you know the Lord is watching us. You know we're being tested.
Almighty God, look down upon this child and heal him.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart. And lean not on your own understanding. Whoever does not love does not know God. Because God is love.
Jesus loves me, this I know.
So, how long you two been friends?
Only all our lives.
I know that. I was there, remember? I meant friend.
Dad, we're not friends.
Randy's not gay.
Oh. Okay.
What do you mean, okay?
Well, I mean, if you were, I'm cool.
Oh, Dad, please.
Andrew Zimbalist Johnson.
Bingo. Wait up, boys.
Do we need to get you tested too?
Dad,
I know.
told you.
You're not gay. But I know how it is. Kids are sparing, man. You know? I mean, I ain't never kissed or anything.
Dad, gross.
Okay, well, I just gotta ask. I kissed a boy once.
What?
Yeah, tongues and everything.
What are you talking about? When?
Before you were born, man. Playing truth or dare. Little Asian dude. Kinda cute, actually. I thought, this is gonna taste everything bad about a man, you know? Car oil, sweat, chewing tobacco. I don't know. Thought it would be flat out strange. Matter of fact, it wasn't strange at all. Kind of armor than what I was used to, but softer than I expected. It was okay. I never felt the urge to do it again, but then again, I had your mom in my life, so I don't know.
Heck, imagine if Mom knew.
What? Well, she was the one that dared me. Yeah, she'll say she don't remember, but I recall her face like it was yesterday. She was standing there laughing, all shocked and thrilled she was into it. Boy, God, your mama, man, that girl could laugh.
Mom? Watching you make out with a man?
Yeah.
Now I got the mental image. I know I'll never make out with a guy.
So, do we have a little something going on with a girl at this time? What? Crystal?
No.
Oh, well, you should. Fine boy like you should have a whole lot of something's going on. I know. You don't want to talk to me about this. I just need you to remember that God made no mistakes making you, even if I did. Never disrespect God by being ashamed of his word.
What are you saying, Dad?
I am saying that you got to follow your gut, son, and be your own man. Ain't no preacher, your mom or me, can say what it is to be a man. That's between you and God.
How am I supposed to know what God wants? I keep asking and asking, and it's just like...
Well, have you been listening and listening? Or you been doing all the talking? By the way, thank you.
For what? Dragging you halfway across the state on behalf of my diseased friend?
For calling me Dad. I really miss hearing that.
They say when you're falling in love, you feel like it's sent from above, but no one can tell you just what you feel when you're falling in love.
All right, so we really want the energy of this room to feel a lot more like a town hall than the room is actually set up for. So I want to share with you all that we originally wanted to be in a circle because the point of coming together today with all these amazing folks is to certainly hear from them and hear their perspectives and their stories, but we really want to hear from you. And we want to use this space as an opportunity to grow together, to really share our love with one another, to heal together through like the shit that we know exists within our community. And so we are going to, throughout the conversation, create some space and some opportunities to actually hear from you. And Darnell and I will do our best to kind of get out there with the mics, and you'll know when those moments are. But first, I want to bring up all of our panelists. Just come on up. We're going to introduce people as we start to get into the conversation, but just pick a seat. Where's Wade? So by now, everybody's seen and knows the This Is Love hashtag, and you're reading and Ebony and looking at the pictures and getting a sense that this epic campaign is going on. So the first thing that I would like to do is to ask Wade talk to us a little bit about the campaign and to kind of set the stage for everyone about why you even started this.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming out today. Literally, I was watching the show Empire. I think that we all love that show. And I was reading blogs and stuff about the show, and the conversation seemed to be centered around the ways that Lucius Lyon, Terrence Howard, didn't affirm his gay son. But I was thinking that Taraji and both of his brothers are very much so affirming of him, but we seem to be focused centrally on that relationship. And I was like, well, wait a minute, 75% of his family structure is loving and affirming, right? And even people in his outside circle are loving and affirming. And it made me think about the narrative that our community isn't loving and affirming is so pervasive that we ourselves only focus on that message. So I called up Darnell, I called up Teak, and I said, let's do something to change this actual narrative. And there's an old African proverb that says, until the lion has a historian, the hunter will always be the hero. So part of our campaign is for you all to share your story. So there is a new historian out there that we can share our stories of love and affection and admiration towards each other, and that hadn't been done. And it was really just three of us really putting in a shitload of hard work, getting critiqued by people. Yeah, I'm gonna say it, right? And to be honest, like for you all to know, like we put this together with our own coins, like our own times, you know. So I really just thank Teak and Darnell. And all of the amazing panelists for really just giving of your time and yourself to say this is a conversation that needed to be had. And we just literally picked up the phone and people just kept saying yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. And I was like, oh my God, like we're truly blessed and fortunate. So I hope that we can have a really beautiful, honest conversation about Black love. But then to keep this conversation going, because people have asked like, what's next? So the three of us will sit down and figure out what's next, and hopefully to engage and involve you all. So thank you all so much.
Awesome. So I want to jump and talk about the power of love. And Amani, we can start with you. Amani Uzuri, who was up here and invoked the beautifully, is a vocalist and composer, cultural worker, and so many beautiful things. And you sing often about love. And I wonder if you can talk about the power of love and what that means for you, particularly, I want to return to this notion of critique. One of the really valid critiques that came our way was how, while we use this LGBT spectrum, there are often many identities in people's lives and their experiences that are left out the conversation. So I want to specifically ask Amani, who identifies as a bisexual woman, to talk about how love shows up in your life, what love means for you.
Thank you. I didn't know I was going to be the first one to talk, but
you is.
Anyway, I just want to say thanks to Darnell for reaching out. I'm really happy to be here, and I definitely was happy because sometimes the B is left out of the conversation, and we know, as I said in my my essay, bisexuality is not a binary, so it includes so many things, and so I'm just happy to be here representing for that. Yeah, for me, love shows up in all kinds of ways. I think, for me, I've been doing a daily practice of gratitude for the last few weeks, which is simply just taking a moment when I first wake up in the morning and just pay attention to all the little details that wash over me that I'm thankful for. I try to make it poetic just to make it seem maybe even deeper than what I want it to be, which when I amplify the goodness, which is what Darnell was talking about earlier, it feels richer. So when I think about the sweetness of plums, or I think about sunlight on snow, or I think about kissing, or just any of these little things that just kind of make me feel rich beyond whatever's in my bank account or what's not there. Another thing, how love shows up for me within my family structure. Like I came out a few years ago to not everyone in my family. A lot of people probably know, but I come from a kind of traditional Black American Christian family who were wilder when they were younger, but they all got saved. But I still remember when they was doing that stuff that wasn't so saved. So I'm like, hey, I'm just a product of y'all, but But you know, one way love shows up is just, you know, like when the essay I wrote for the Ebony Mag, This Is Love campaign, is that acceptance is tricky. And for me, acceptance of me and who I am and my queerness and my bisexuality is not about accepting every single thing or agreeing with every single thing around my spectrum. I don't really need them to do that. I have finally come to peace with who I am, and my God is my God, and my life and my community. But just simple things like my aunt making a special pan of gluten-free cornbread dressing when I went home to North Carolina. That's how love shows up for me. People praying for me, even though they're secretly praying for my salvation, they're still praying. They're still praying for me, and I know those prayers are help me live every day. So, and how it shows up, you know, one of the things, the last thing I'll say, because I know you didn't expect me to probably go on as long as I've been going, but
I'm gonna just do Sandman dances whenever.
Okay, thank you.
I got my silver shoes on today. Did y'all see my silver shoes? Do you want to see my silver shoes? I put these on the dance for the girls.
One of the things, a couple of mythologies about bisexuals is that, you know, we hoes, we love everything that moves, which a lot of us are hoes. I mean, whatever, however we identify. So, but you know, and that we don't know how to be monogamous because we're just confused and da 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 da. And for me, all that is not true. For me, being bisexual is just about being present for how love really does show up in my life, and however it is embodied, I'm just present. And so I find myself just falling in love with people's energy, and then whatever their gender identity or their gender expression happens to be, that is not the primary reason why I fall in love with them. And I feel like a lot of people have a hard time grasping that, but I think, you know, just breathe. I mean, the sun and the moon, we both love the sun and the moon. We both love the sun, the moon, and the stars. And the same way our queer identities is a spectrum, that's how I feel I love as a bi person. So, thank you.
Thank you. So when Wade came and crashed our lunch, we were in Denver recently to talk about this event. My wife Danielle and I were like, you know what, we're supposed to be going to LA, but we're actually gonna stay in DC to participate in this and just like wait a couple days, because we were so moved to be able to share a space with Black queer people to talk about something positive. We've spent the last at least 4 years or so doing Black LGBT policy and advocacy work on a national level. And let me tell you, it can be very depressing to have conversations about our community in that context, because much of what I end up trying to navigate are conversations about all of the isms and the ills that affect our community. We have a deficit lens that we have to bring to these policy conversations a lot of the time, because we have disparities and we have gaps and we have violence and we have all of these other issues that are affecting us, health disparities, etc. And so what is really, really dope, I think, about this moment, the fact that we're all together tonight, is that we actually get to lead with a conversation about the positive aspects of love that boost us, the things that get us through the day that are wonderful. We can talk about the hopefulness and the energy that like helps us get out of bed every day. And so we would love some testimonials to just like kick us off, right? Like we want to hear from y'all. Like tell us who has a story of acceptance of love as just, you know, being a Black LGBT person, whether it be around coming out or be about somebody baking you some gluten-free cornbread up in your house and that making you feel a part of your family, a part of your community. Please share it with us.
And can we just say this? This is not First Apostolic Church on 52nd Street in West Philly,
Amen.
where I grew up. Testimonies went way too long. We want to hear from everybody. This is like Marantha Church. 60-second testimonials.
I'll come back and get the mic and snatch it real quick. So, I saw a hand up.
I'll be real brief. Good evening, everyone. My name is Vinton Jones, and my story is about back in when I first graduated from college back in 2006. I was about 23 years old, and I was faced with being at the crossroads of deciding, do I want to work in Black LGBT work, and what was that going to look like, and how was that going to be? But at that time, I wasn't out. So I had to make the decision to move back home, not at home, but in the same city, and decided to come out to my family. And so I came out to my family, and long story short, because I got about 30 more seconds left, it was a very traumatic process as far as with my dad calling me a couple of things, my grandmother, threatening to commit suicide, and a whole bunch of other things. And so fast forward a couple years later, I end up being diagnosed with HIV. And during that time, I was very reluctant about telling my family because for some reason, or just period, they associated, okay, well, you're black, you're gay, HIV is coming. So that was something I was very reluctant to tell my family. And so I ended up telling my grandmother and my father about it happening. Actually, they found out in the magazine, but I ended up telling them. And right now, they are some of my biggest advocates. Every time there is a issue on Facebook about the HIV vaccine or the new pill that's out, my grandmother always calling me, and she like, Poke, because my nickname Pork Chop. She said, Poke. She said, have you seen this on the Facebook? And she's telling me about this coming out. And so I think that just knowing that the issue that was, the big issue that was around coming out, and to be able to see them now being able to be advocates for my health is the greatest thing in the world, and something that's so affirming because of the relationship that I have and the closeness that I have with my family. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Tim and West. A lot of friends and allies and colleagues here. I'm really glad to be here. I'm actually got a jet because I'm doing a lecture on empire, race, sexuality, and hip hop at both University of Richmond and University of Virginia tomorrow and Wednesday. And I'm linking it to this overarching conversation that's been going on here because I think it's so important. In my own family, it hasn't always been that easy. My dad is a minister. I grew up in the church. But our family and the love, that this is love that we talk about, has evolved to such a point that when my dad heard about the lecture in Richmond, which is where he lives and pastors, he was like, well, how can I come and support you at the event? Because we actually have, as an artist, we actually have a very Lucius Jamal kind of relationship. And so he actually mentioned that. He's like, we can actually talk about our experiences and how we work through that struggle in real life. And so I think that's a testimony that it may not always happen at first, but I think people do get there, and I think love can bring people to that point.
Love you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll let you have one more because you just looked really intent on saying something. Darnell's gonna cuss me out.
Okay, I'm gonna be real quick. I'm brief. Teague knows I'm brief. I don't like to talk that much. But I just thought it was important to share mine. Mine is real brief. Hi. I was raised Jehovah's Witness, and I'm transgender male. Grew up with Teague, Buffalo. And I remember I never told anybody I was gonna transition. I just did it because I knew they would trip. And then I got a call from my grandmother one day, and she's the only one in our family that's still a Jehovah's Witness. And she called and said, hey, I have to ask you a question. Your mama told me that you're a man now. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, I still love you. I just want you to know that. And anytime you need to come here, you always have a place in my house. And she has never given me a problem, ever. I've always received
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So, it's great that we can begin on this really positive note, but we do need to keep it real and kind of set a foundation to talk about, the real things that actually happen out there in the world and the experiences that we have that we're trying to navigate. So Teague, actually, thank you for teeing him up. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on with LGBT youth.
I spent a lot of my career working, doing direct services, working frontline with LGBT youth. And what I can say is that, when these young people don't have the support and love of their family, that is really the catalyst to so many terrible things that happen in these young people's lives. We saw literally a migration of young black LGBT people from the South and from the islands, these young people who are coming from, fairly, stable home environments, who are literally kicked out in the streets, who come to New York or who are ostracized in their communities, and are coming to New York with just the clothes on their backs, and a bag, and are fending for themselves. And I think what a lot of families need to understand, that outside of accepting your child, within whatever religiosity you're going through, or, we have to understand that this is also a place of safety. This is a child's first line of safety. This is a child's first line of creating their confidence in them, So when that's taken away from them, it really leaves these young people empty. And they're constantly searching for that love. and for that safety. And a lot of times they find it in the wrong places. I know me as a trans man, I had to come out twice. I came out as lesbian when I was 15. I came out as transgender when I was 26. I don't know where I would be without the love and support of my family. And if it wasn't for that frontline protection that my mother, as a matriarch of a very large Christian family, set up, you know, I would have been just thrown to the wolves. You know, and this is a very real thing. You know, so. It's so important for us to be able to have these intimate conversations with our family. And also countering the narrative is also about not really engaging in the narrative and giving people the space to work through their shit. You know, coming out as transgender, it took me time to figure it out. You know, there was times that I hated myself and I didn't understand what it was, so it wouldn't be fair to me to come to my family and expect them to get it just like that. So also it's about creating a lot of space to talk about it, to process it, you know, to get it wrong, to get it right. You know, and ask the awkward conversations, and really giving, you know, our family and our people the benefit of the doubt. But when we don't have that, it's a really detrimental thing to our young people and to our community as a whole.
So I want to name some of those things, right? So we know that that homeless young people are disproportionately represented, 40% of that number, and that number is probably underreported. Happen to identify as LGBT. Mobility issues, that is access in and out of spaces, employment, lack of income. I mean, we can go down the line. So we don't want to have this facade and act like there are not real structural issues that people face, because they do. Ms. Lawrence, hi.
Hi. Is my mic on? Is she on? I like for it to be turned all the way up.
I want to ask you about your life. What was life like? I'm certain there were moments of love. We talk about this often. And I'm certain there were moments of lovelessness. Talk about some of your challenges.
So, how's everyone?
By the way, don't Ms. Lawrence look real fly? Yeah. All right.
Thank you. For you guys, and I had to do the Brown & Brother Hair Show earlier today in Atlanta. And let me say thank you. So I'm sorry, tell me your name again, the one who led that good old Imani. Yes, she gave me a sense of nostalgia there. I grew up in the Baptist church, and we did a lot of that. And I'm now Pentecostal. So thank you for that. That really put me in a good space. But glory, honey. She took me back to my roots, honey. That was good. That was a good icebreaker, don't you guys think? So having said that, I grew up in the church, very close to my family, grandparents. As you know, growing up, my parents, you know, we grew up in the South. They're from the South, South Carolina, Social Circle, Georgia, which is really, really country. So, you know, a lot of how do I want to say it? Bifurcated traditions go on down south in the Bible Belt states. You understand? And so once I learned that it was not meant for me to be, you know, overly masculine and all that type of stuff, I started to withdraw myself from my family. I was never ostracized from my family, and I've shared this with Darnell several times. I was never ostracized from my family. I did it to myself. But I stayed in the same household, so it was really, it was kind of cold a little bit, because my parents didn't understand what was going on with me. They just knew that, okay, well, he's acting really weird. And then as I grew older and started, you know, going into high school and started being a fashion flexible, if you will, and well, what's the tea? And started being fashion flexible and started dealing with very pummeling people, you know, people that were really horrible, said horrible things, called my parents home, told them, oh, Lawrence is down here with cut-up jeans on and little halter tops and ... Then I had to rush home and change clothes on the bus and go back home and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, eventually when I learned that my parents, they had the typical questions, what's wrong? Did we do something? Did someone do something to you? ... And the answer was no to all of those questions. They fully embraced me and accepted me. But I still myself didn't feel like it was 100% genuine. I think they would just say those things and do that because that's what you're supposed to do. Oh, you gotta love your child regardless, or you gotta love your mother and father regardless. Da 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 da. So I still remain ostracized. I still stayed in my room. I would sneak out, go to the clubs, and do all that type of stuff. So once I prayed, because I had to go back to my church roots, and once I started praying and just understanding, asking God to really reveal to me exactly who I was and what I was destined to do. And once he started revealing in me who I was, and blessings started to just flow and flow and flow, and I started gaining all my gifts, the gifts of song, and really being able to use those, and being in the beauty industry and really finding who Miss Lawrence was, because Miss Lawrence is just not a name that just came up out of the blue. Miss Lawrence came from me. I grew up singing in the church, traveled all overseas and everything singing, but I would have to be in tuxedos and what those shoes you guys wear, I don't know. Those, yeah. And shoes and ascots and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, this is not what I wanted to do, honey. So I left it. I got into the beauty industry. I've always been extremely attracted to women, not sexually, but I've always been extremely attracted to women. And so I had a fascination with hair, and I said, let me try this. So I started assisting for several profound hairstylists in Atlanta, and I learned that the beauty industry is somewhere where I could just be myself. If I want to wear makeup, I could wear makeup. If I want to do, and that is where I became extremely comfortable. That is when it was revealed to me that, oh, this is where you're going to get your peace from. This is where your peace is going to come. This is where you're going to fully accept yourself. And so through that is where Miss Lawrence came from. Several friends of mine was like, oh, that child, you Miss Lawrence. They don't know that's Miss Lawrence. So it did not come from Atlanta Housewives, by the way. She was quite established before that show. Yes. And, so fast forwarding, I tell people all the time, especially youth, the most important thing to do is to always seek God first. Before you seek acceptance from your parents, you seek acceptance and revelation from God. And once you get that sense of peace, and you know that you are always going to have somebody walking with you that you cannot see, I think it makes it so much easier to go through the world and just to go through trials and tribulations, just knowing that there's somebody there that's holding your hand that nobody else can see. And then people become baffled. Then you start to puzzle the people, and then people start to know that there is something unique there. And it's nothing more than the glory of God. That's all. And that is what has gotten me through. So the love part, since we're talking about this love is when my mother would call me from time to time years ago, and she would say, I want to borrow that YSL bag I saw you with. I said, oh, okay. That's interesting. I said, oh, so I said, she must really live for this. But no, seriously, then I learned then that it just wasn't a thing of, let me say I love him because I'm supposed to. When she started to really embrace and want to be in my life and and want to carry my handbags, want to wear what lipstick you had on last night, all that kind of stuff, that is when I found real love. That unconditional love we learned from my parents, and then my father calling, how's everything going, and we want to come to the show and all that type of stuff. So I'm in a very happy place. I'm in a very, very happy place, and I know it's because I stayed true to who I was supposed to be and who I was destined to be, and knowing that God has always been with me and will continue to be with me.
Yes, Evangelist Lawrence.
I'm not an evangelist. I told you, she did that, honey. That glory, that right there.
I really, really appreciate you starting off talking about the self-love piece and the ostracizing yourself from your family before you even know how they're going to react, because that just hit home for me. That's exactly what I did. I didn't come out, and I didn't come out, I guess, to my family, to my colleagues, largely because I was afraid of what they were going to think of me, not having known that the biggest challenge was that I wasn't opening myself up enough to them to allow them to love me. And that was the case when I worked for I was the executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus's PAC. So I was working for the political Negroes. And y'all know that's real, right? Like, these are like the black people in town. And I was very, very, very closeted when I worked for them, largely because I think it had a lot to do with myself, right? I didn't know how they were going to react and respond to me. And I didn't know, and I also was afraid because the truth is there's a bit of animosity that comes up with queer people in Black liberation movements. Like, that's just real, right? And so, I would love to hear, Diamond, your experience working with the Black Youth Project. I mean, talk to us a little bit about that, what it's like to kind of be a queer person within a Black liberation movement more broadly. And I also am interested to hear a little bit about how that's playing out from like an intergenerational standpoint. I was working with folks who are, these are the folks who literally marched with Martin. It's a very different type of, I would say, Black civil rights movement than maybe we even see today.
Great. So I think I'm going to answer this question firstly by saying the reason why I joined Black Youth Project 100 was because that the organization has a focus as a queer feminist lens, right? So I knew going into this that I want to be part of the organization, this my BYP family. I see you all in the mix.
Where's BYP, by the way? Hey, there they
Represent.
go. Can I just say we should really applaud these millennial folk who are doing this work on the ground every day.
Right, so I find that, in my day-to-day, obviously I'm not necessarily dealing with this. But when you talk about on a broad scale, right, so when we were doing actions, right, you see it in two places. You see it on the ground, obviously, if you're dealing with direct language, or even erasing queer folks from who's giving talks, who's on the stage. You see it there, but then you also see it in institutions, right? So it's on the ground, it's also institutions and policies and initiatives that organizations take on, right? So if you're not studying, again, why Black queer youth are being outside of their homes and are homeless, then are you really doing the work to get us all free? So I always go back to this point that, like, we can't get free until all of us are free. You would think that people would figure that out by now, but they haven't. But I really think that's important, and that's why I'm doing the work that I'm doing.
Thank you so much. So we also know that it's would be false. It wouldn't be right for us to have a conversation like this without also talking about the ways in which we've also experienced hurt, personally, amongst those that we love, but also within movements. Because part of our healing process also comes from being able to testify about the demons we fight, too. So we want to give you an opportunity to talk about some of the challenges you face either within movements, Black liberation movements, even challenges you face as any of the L, the G, the B, the T within our own segregated communities. And give you an opportunity to share any of those things if you like. So any volunteers who like to share space.
So hi, everybody. I'm Angelica Ross.
Woo!
Woo! All right. Whoa. So listening to this conversation, I just want to put out there something that as a Black trans woman that many of us still are dealing with and that I'm definitely dealing with myself, but like I'm loving the conversation around Black love and seeing Black love and seeing Teak and Kim together and seeing like Precious and Miles together and seeing all these things. But as trans women of color and as we are like dying in mass numbers sort of around the country, and part of it like at the hands of, you know, people are writing this narrative around that we are tricking people or that this other kind of stuff, but where trans women are fighting for our lives, there are men there that are fighting to keep us a secret and keep this a secret, and it goes back to, like, again, our families and Black families and masculinity and misogyny, all these kind of different things. But what it also, what a side effect of that was, and it's very embarrassing for me sort of to, like, admit it or to talk about it, but, like, I became very, very fearful of Black men. And, you know, I am someone who has been known for a lot of my life to have dated mostly white guys. And I've been single 8 years. I'm still single, just in case. So always have to put the advertisement out there. Shameless, absolutely. But the guy that I was with was very privileged and came from money and different things. And when I broke up with him and left him because I decided I needed and I wanted more, I didn't realize why I was attracted to these men and to the privilege and a lot of things. And I started unpacking a lot of stuff. I'm still unpacking stuff, child. But so I'm just finally getting to this place, like when we get to Black Lives Matter and we're talking about all these different things and seeing like our Black people come together and seeing this love. And I am honestly, for the first few years in a while, actually, like, I know in my heart, like, that I would prefer to find love within my community with him, and to find love with a black man who I don't have to communicate to why, Eric Gardner shouldn't have been selling cigarettes, whatever that it was, oh, he shouldn't have been doing this or whatever the conversations are. So just in the fact that black, like right now, the state of our community and black love and black men, right now trans women, we're still left out on the outside of that. So I'm still feeling a little cold from the love. I need to be shown a little bit more love.
Oh, I have to stand? Okay, well, God is good. Well, for those who do not know who I am, I'm Racine Pendarvis, and I am part of the ARP community, the over 60 girls. So my soul is just, I wasn't going to say anything, but I want you to understand, especially with us, LGBT, whatever we want to call ourselves, my heart aches because sometimes we forget the seniors in our community. And when I became a senior, I want you to understand something. It is important. First of all, I love young people and we need you. But I want you to also sometimes sit and talk to older GLBT people, because I want you to understand history. 40 years ago on this corner where we standing, the girls used to trick. And when we did not have a place, we hung on 13th Street and 14th Street and 15th Street in these corridors. And everyone hung together, butch queens, drag queens, femme queens, whatever, because we didn't have a place. So we created a place. And the girls protected us. The butch lesbians protected us, and the trans girls protected us because they had to fight. And I sit here on this corner and my heart just aches because when I see this, 40 years later, the girls who did not make it over with me, who stood on the corner and we fought the police. You know, the butch queens would have to fight for the girls and the girls would have to fight for the beats because they would arrest you when you would wear any article of female clothing. And if you could not pass, you were in trouble. And because I was young and cunty, I could pass. But some of the girls couldn't. And if you could not, you were in trouble. So you either had to run quick or fight or be arrested. And if the lesbians who were hard, who could get through, and if they didn't, they would get arrested. So it's a history that I want you people to understand when I think about all the people, Puffy, Tracy, Monica, Ann, all the girls now, but all the old girls, Roberta, Janice, Avis, Paris, so many people, trans. We had such a community that was so together. We were more together, but what aches me is in this generation of all this social stuff that we have, we're so divided. So I want you to understand that we all need one another. And I know I'm over my 60 seconds, but I'm old and I've earned the right. But we don't acknowledge each other in the presence of one another. In the presence of each other. When we came in this room, some of y'all didn't even say hello to one another. You was going, But it's important to speak and acknowledge each other in the presence of being, especially with our young trans girls who are dying at alarming rates, and our young children who are barebacking and thinking HIV does not exist. And did not, because see, it's a pretty face on HIV. It's pretty. Everybody's pretty with it. See, I came through an era when the girls were dying. You saw them on a Tuesday, they were dying on Saturday. So I want you to understand, just because you can live better with HIV doesn't mean that you don't have it. And you cannot catch it, young people. So we've got to take the time to educate, acknowledge, embrace. But I want you to know that the pain that I feel, because I see so much freedom, I see it, but part of the girls who did not come with me on this journey, I ache. I ache and I carry them with me, and I ache because I cry sometimes because I want these girls to be able to see this, and I know they're looking down saying, God damn it, we didn't die in vain. We did not die in vain, and I know you're getting ready to get me saying, man. So let me say this before I leave, and before I get off this mic. I'm not going to leave, but I feel like I'm about to. But just turn to each other and hug the person next to you and acknowledge that person. Acknowledge. God bless. Thank you, baby.
Who's gonna?
I need to get my love in.
Yes, he's so I'm just going to introduce him and I can give you the mic if that's...
Before, I love this. I love this. I wanted to, before we move right back to our panelists, open up space to also talk about other communities that often experience marginalization, particularly disabled LGBT folk. So I did want to provide space for one of our brothers to offer some words.
My name is Kim Milan. I'm Teek's wife. I live in Toronto, but I've done a lot of work here in the US. And a couple of years ago, I was invited to Gallaudet University, which is in DC, which is a deaf university. And I was invited to participate in a space for queer folks of color. And as a hearing person, I was so honored to be in that space because I learned so much about what it meant for me to be in possession of hearing privilege and to challenge ideas around autism. And I've been really lucky to have people in my life like Noor and like Najma and a lot of other folks who have been in this space, you know, who have really challenged me to make sure that I'm creating avenues to have all of our community present. You know, that so often when we talk about inclusiveness, we maybe talk about like the LGBT acronym, but we're not talking about access needs. We're not talking about deaf folks. We're not talking about blind folks. You know, like my grandmother's blind, and like there's so many people who we miss out on having in our spaces collectively, and so much discourse that we're not having with each other. And I remember the first time I sat down with Noor, we kind of had an interpreter and like a friend and like a piece of paper, and we had so much to say to each other, but it was such a difficult process, you know, and for me, it was just a huge reminder of like, where have we been? You know, so often we're spending all these time trying to talk to white people about including us, but we're not talking to each other. We're not communicating with each other. You know, we're not recognizing that, like, as hearing people, we have to learn sign. We have to make sure that this sort of access is shifting. And so I wanted to kind of connect that and introduce Noor, who I've learned so much from, and just also remind us all that we need to be really engaged in that process as well.
Thank you, Kim, for that introduction, and certainly I agree with the comments you gave about our experiences. So yeah, I definitely can relate with so many of you in the experiences that we've all had. My name is Noor Abdul. I am a black deaf individual, and I grew up actually in Toronto, Canada, just like Kim, and I recently moved here to Washington, D.C. about 3.5 years ago. There's lots of access here for people who are deaf, with respect to actually people who sign. And so now I just want to share with you Najma. Najma is a black deaf, Najma is a black deaf queer person, blind person. I want to talk about photocentrism as well as autism. And of course, autism is related to phonocentrism. As well as it's a lot of dealing with the marginalization of deaf and hard of hearing people inside of the actual community itself, and it's a societal issue. It's an ideology, and so basically that means that for all people, you know, the idea is that, okay, well, you're supposed to be hearing, you're supposed to be able to speak and to be a hearing person, when that's not really the case. Obviously, it's really interesting how the marginalization exists for people who are deaf and blind, deaf and hard of hearing as well. and that includes so many of different groups that are there, and they're left out. Just like, for example, if you see on TV, the advertisements that go out, they may have black people there, but have they really considered who the audience is, and do they include people who are black and deaf and blind? There's no mention there at all about this group of people, and that's a very frustrating thought of lack of inclusivity. And so, for example, I'll give you an example here, where there's the video was playing, and the lights went out, and you had the interpreters who were there, and so that's an example of being not included. And so, obviously, it was hard for me to see the interpreters. I'm not trying to blame or point fingers here, but just to give you an example of what that kind of looks like of not being included. And so, also, TAS, Together. You can go to Najama on our Facebook page to get more information about that, and the founder of that organization. If you're curious, you definitely should take a look in to see what that's about, deaf, hard of hearing, as well as the blind community. Look on that page. It's Facebook. Definitely, you can check it out. It's NAJAMA. And the name of the page is Together, All In. And that's what it stands for. So Together, All in Solidarity, TAS, that's what the page is. So you can definitely take a look at that, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would just want to add one of the things that Noor and Najma had really spoken to me about, or had really communicated with me about, is the experience of, we talk about like the experiences that we have with the police, but what does that look like when you can't hear the police, right? And like that kind of violence in prison, when you can't be, there's so many young deaf kids who grow up with teachers thinking that they're not intelligent and not capable because they can't hear them and they're not communicating to them in that way. Or even just small privileges that we don't recognize, the ability to overhear someone talking about you, right? To know that someone might be following you, right? Like all of these things that we need for our own safety, the ability to call someone on the phone when you feel like you're in trouble, right? Like recognizing that the kinds of networks and supports that we need in our communities very much is what our elder was saying, is that we need each other. But if we're not reaching out to each other or communicating in languages that we all understand, it ends up not being valuable, right? And we have to, like especially as hearing people, we have to think about what it would look like to make commitment to be engaged in learning sign and actually remembering that our community is so much bigger than what we get to see.
Yes. Thank you. I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that up, because all I can say is like, yes, thank you. We did an event here in September, right? Wasn't it September? And a very similar conversation came up, but after the fact. There was a whole community of folks here that were disabled. I think one person was in a wheelchair. There might have been 2 people who were hearing impaired. We were completely unprepared. And we got the business about it, but I think that it was just really important for us to be challenged, to remind ourselves that just because we run around with our Black Power trope, and just because we run around with our LGBT and every other alphabet that you can add to it, doesn't necessarily mean that we're repping everybody. And I think that, I appreciate y'all. Thank you very much. So what am I supposed to say next? Okay. Black love, all of us, inclusivity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we just had conversations about the fact that, like, there's lots of pain, there's lots of hurt, things that, like, stymie us from being our best selves, right? From loving one another in the way that we should. I'm going to turn to Jason to talk to us. I was going to translation, right? So do you guys know Jason Collins? Yeah. Former NBA player. I don't think he needs an introduction. I'm going to turn to Jason to just talk to us about how love heals, how love bridges this divide that we know exists. And one of the things I thought was interesting the first time I met him is that he's a twin brother, which I want to know, like, exactly what your twin brother looks like, how tall he is. Like, I would love to meet him too. But talk to us a little bit about that relationship and about how, like, love with your brother, how that has kind of manifest in your life and helped you come out and be who you are.
Yeah, well, quickly, my brother actually will be here tomorrow. Yeah, he's an assistant coach for the Golden State Warriors, and the Warriors play the Wizards on Tuesday night. So I'll be going to the game. And no, he's he's been married for 10. Yeah, he's been married for 10 years, and they have 3 beautiful children together. And that's another dynamic, obviously, with my brother being straight and me being gay. You know, I was afraid to come out to him probably the most. This is someone that, you know, we have that twin connection, that twin talk. When we grew up, we actually had to go to speech therapists because my brother and I, we were the only ones who could really understand what we were trying to say and communicate with others. So when I finally did come out to him, he was shocked. He wasn't expecting it. I came out to him when I was probably 33 or 34 years old. And he was worried because we grew up in the culture of sport, and he knows what it's like to be in that locker room sometimes and hear guys pound your chest and try to be, the most macho, most masculine, most in the room. And at times, the language in the locker room can be very homophobic. So he was worried for me because he knew that I wanted to still play. So I remember driving over to his house and having a conversation with him in the morning. And my brother, you have to understand the dynamic. It's funny you should bring up him being single. His wife and him, when you have a conversation with one, they're one of those couples that it's like having a conversation with both of them. They really, it's a little odd to me, but teacher. I guess that's how it should be though, right? I don't know. Anyways, and he was worried because his wife, who's Mexican, grew up in a very strong Roman Catholic family. He was worried what her reaction and is this going to be an issue between? Am I going to have to pick? I can see it in his face. Am I going to have to pick my brother or my wife? And a couple hours later, I had a conversation with her and was able to talk to her, and she immediately, tears, started, and was like, "We love you. It doesn't matter." And I looked over at my brother, and I could see the relief leave his face, and that he was just like, "This is," that he wasn't going to have to go down that road. And then our dynamic was also, I am 8 minutes older, and I really embrace the big brother role, even though I'm 8 minutes older, because I was always I guess in basketball, I was always the center, the enforcer, the physical guy and my brother kind of played on the perimeter more. And I just took that mentality off the court, so that I really, in our relationship, leading up until that point, I was the big brother until he saw that I was gonna, be going up against some people in the world who were gonna hate me just because, the fact that I'm gay. And he really became overprotective, and I really appreciate that. Now, I can tell you a quick story. This actually happened 2 weeks ago. This is speaking of love. He's going around the NBA, and the culture of sport, mind you, has changed a lot since, even since I've come out, and Michael Sam and Robbie Wade. But there still are those instances that happen that, again, it's evolving for everyone, for the different leagues. There was an issue where an NBA team had up on a Jumbotron the kiss cam. Have you guys all seen that during the games? So at the end of the kiss cam, this NBA team put up the Warriors were on the road, and they had 2 players from the Warriors up there, and they're saying, and the PA announcer was yelling, "Go ahead, get a little closer, give him a kiss." And obviously it was awkward for the guys to be up on the big screen, and the crowd starts laughing. And my brother sitting there is like, he got really offended because at the end of the day, this is a gay joke. And in no other way would the NBA, knowingly go after, gender, religion, race that way. So at the end of the game, the Warriors ended up winning that game. He went up to the PA announcer and then also the head of in-game entertainment for that particular team and had a conversation with them where he said to them, do you realize how offensive that is? Do you realize that there are families, there are kids who are getting an image of seeing two guys up on screen and laughing and that particular in-game head of in-game entertainment and the PA announcer were very dismissive to my brother when he was having that conversation with them. To the point where when my brother turned away to walk away, they made a comment to him, and he immediately turned around and said, "What did you say? Or what did you just say to me?" The individual repeated it, and my brother proceeded to curse him out. And I love that support. And then afterwards, he called me. And since I now work for the NBA, I was actually headed to New York. I had some meetings anyways, and I had a conversation with the VP because sometimes the league office isn't aware of what's happening around the league. Now that game happened on a Monday. By Wednesday or Thursday, the president of that particular organization was calling my brother to apologize to him and then also to say that that will never happen again. And I love that about the NBA where it can move very fast, very quickly. Now, we've seen, not to pick on Wade in the NFL, but I don't think the NFL would ever move that quickly on a subject. So that's why, as I'm going around, if you guys see something if you guys do go to an NBA game and you see something that you feel, reach out to me through Twitter, I'm sure you can get a hold of Wade, and let me know because the NBA will move very quickly to fix the situation and make it better for all of us.
Thank you. So, like many on the panel, I have many stories about the love. Many of you who know me know I love my sisters and my mom. I love my family. So when I came out to my sisters, they were so excited. I mean, they were, like really, really, really like overly excited, except for the one sister that was like, and if somebody call you a name, I'm gonna whoop that ass. I'm gonna whoop that ass. That was Tasha. So Danielle, I want to talk to you about your relationship to your sister. You wrote about this in your Ebony piece, and about the love you experienced with your sister and when you disclosed and how she's been showing up in your life ever since.
I wish that she was here. My sister lives in Vietnam. So I want to thank you guys so much. I want to thank Wade for crashing the lunch that I was having with Aisha, my wife, to tell us about this event so that we could radically change our plans to be here today, because it is so important for me and for us and just all of us to be in a space that is about love and support, and to know that we're not the only ones, right? And that in this moment right now, we're having this radical moment of love and connectedness. And I just appreciate it so much. And I appreciate you, by the way, and the comments that you made, like epicness. I forget for how long I've lived in DC, how much has happened during this time. And it was a really wonderful reminder of the privilege that we have having following in your footsteps. So my sister, I am the younger sister. I'm the little sister, and anybody who knows me probably can figure that out. And she is 5 years older than I am. And we were headed on a family vacation. I'm from Long Island, New York, a area that is 96% white. And my sister is like my ace. Like, she would be at tea parties with me. I would send invitations, knock on her door next door. She is 5 years older than I am. Any older sister that is that far in age would generally brush you off, not mine. She came, she teed, she cocktailed. It was fabulous. So when we're headed on a family vacation, and at this time I'm 12 years old, and she is 17 going on 18, and I know that there is something different about me and my friends. That I know that as we talk about Kiki and being girlfriends and what have you, that I feel different. And I feel so alone because I am 12, I'm in middle school, and I have nobody to share this with. I have nobody to confide in that I'm feeling something different. So we're sitting on the rooftop of our hotel, and we're talking and we're hanging out, and I had been bubbling over, just wanting to say I think I'm gay, I think I'm a lesbian, just wanting to just get it out as quickly as possible. So my sister's noticing that I'm being very oddly quiet and look very contemplative. So she says to me, what is it? And I'm like, tears in my eyes, and I say, I think that I'm gay. And my sister looks at me and she's like, so? And it was the most affirming so that I think that I have until this day ever heard. And the follow-up to that was, so? She's like, I thought that something was really wrong. She's like, I have friends that are bisexual and gay, and she's like, it's totally fine. I love you. And it would take me, and I wrote this in the piece for Ebony, that it would take me another 10 years. I was 12, so it would take me another 10 years to have the courage to finally come out and stay out, and tell my parents, and then the world, and then apparently dedicate my life to just being gay and fabulous. But it was her first affirmation to me that I love you anyway, not in spite of, but because of, that just has given me, she literally made me stand up taller that day. And I knew that I wasn't ready at that moment to come out and be out, but that when I did, that she would always have my back. And so from the tea parties in my childhood bedroom to being my maid of honor on my wedding day was the most full circle moment I think that we had as sisters. For her to stand there and stand up for me in front of everybody. Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. This is 4 years ago. I'm because I love her so much. But she's always been there. And it pains me so much to think about the young kids who they don't get that first, so I love you anyway. They get the, I'm disgusted, or they get the silence, or they get the turn back, or they get the boot, and they're on the street. And so I am so grateful for her, and feel so fortunate and filled with love for her. And I think that is why I've wanted to dedicate my work to making sure that people know that they can be visible, that they can be fabulous, that they can find love. And that's what we're doing here today. So thank you.
Indeed, that's what we're doing here today. And it is really, wonderful to just be reminded how solidarity is what makes us stand with our back up straight, right? It's what boosts our self-esteem. And it's good to hear these stories because it reminds me that as I move through the world, I need to move through the world affirming other people. Because someone affirmed me one day, and that's how I can stand here in front of you. And so I need to constantly remember to be more like sister. Tona.
Hello, everyone.
So I was going to introduce you, and then I was like, you know what? I kind of want you to tell a little bit about your own story as a performer and being at Carnegie Hall, and really, because I think that your story really solidifies the importance and the power of solidarity and allyship. So
It
share
really does.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, what I'll say before I go into the ally part is that if it wasn't for my family filling me with a sense of good self-esteem, then I would have never offered to do any of those things or tried to make it happen, even if it was difficult. because you have to, when you're a performer, you have to get in front of so many people. And the only thing that helps many of us, as I teach my students, is to have certain techniques that get you away from yourself. When I was fortunate enough to perform for Barack Obama, I remember never being happier in my life. It was a sense of, I have to do this. I have to do that. I don't know what I look like in this moment. You know, I was very emotional at the time. The same thing with Carnegie Hall, because it was such a historical event. As far as allies are concerned,
Hold on, you have to back up and you have to give the context to how you got there.
Okay. Okay. Well, I, like Lawrence, and like so many other people, my family is very, very religious. Very religious. My mother was a youth evangelist, and my grandmother and everybody else. So you can only imagine, it's one thing, none of our struggles are less than or whatever, but you can only imagine they're from Southern Virginia through Louisiana. They're wonderful people, but there, like Miss Lawrence, there are times where I had to get away from some of those people. And it was because of my mom. My mom was a dynamic woman, and I say was because she passed away about 4 or 5 years ago. She was very progressive. And you know, the older I get, the more amazed I am at someone coming from what she came from, and instilling something in a transgender child. It blows my mind. And what she used to say to me all the time was, well, who told you that you couldn't do this? Who told you were gay? Who told you were bisexual? Who told you this? You know, I don't want you to put a label on yourself until you are sure about this. At this age, we're going to have this conversation. Why do you feel the need to have surgeries for XYZ? She was one of those people, her as well as my great aunts, who kind of got away from the more religious side of the family. And they sheltered me a bit. I will say that. I didn't party or do any of that kind of thing. If there were friends or family members that didn't seem like they could understand who I was as a kid, because I was a very flamboyant child, which is why I love the children. She called LGBT people the children. She said that we were special and we should be put on pedestals for being the warriors that we were. She went into the community and started to do research on transgender people. But I didn't know I was transgender. I just thought I was just being me. So when I was a double Dutch champion and all of these little things, you gotta keep it real, you know, I was pretty funny as a child, you know, because my parents didn't make me feel weird for being me. And that's what I love about what you all are doing, and the reason why I wanted to be here. Because they just wanted me to be strong. They said, you need to be independent, you need to have a good self-esteem. So of course, when some of those major opportunities came, I just went with them, you know. And as far as the allies are concerned, I'm glad that you asked me to do that, because many of my major performances and opportunities have come from allies to the community. Men and women who saw that I was doing something and might not have been LGBTQA or, you know, well, Q, but they just wanted to see something happen. And they would come to me and say, you know what, why? In fact, Carnegie Hall happened because of a writer by the name of Nathan James, who said to me, Tona, you come up to New York all the time, you're so supportive of everyone, why don't you perform at Carnegie Hall? And I said, I don't know, you know, I never really, you know, it was a dream of mine, but I didn't know how to make it happen. So I think it's imperative for us to realize that we should not alienate our allies, that we need to train them, of course, to know our language, to know what we're about, to be supportive, and to sit down sometimes, because you don't know everything. And then to show them that we are a community that needs them, because we can't do it on our own. We just can't. We're just not large enough in numbers. economically. So that's why I do things in Washington. That's why I try to network with all sorts of people. But allies are extremely important.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. So I wanna turn back to you all again. Every now and then I feel like invoking a damn song. I feel like we need to wake something up in here. All these singers and
Amen.
musicians. What's the matter with Jesus? Nothing. Testing you. I was testing you. I want us to. So we've heard this word family. We've used this word a lot of times. But I also don't want us to be stuck to this this definition of family that means biological family, the families. Some of us have had to create our own. Many of us, in fact, are alive because we had to leave families and go create new ones in order to be here. And I want to make space for us to testify about that. Is there anyone that want to share the families in which you've had to create the joy? Yeah, sure.
Thank you. My name is Carell Julian. I'm from New York. Actually, if you could hold that. Hi, everybody. So for me, when I would have to say around like 12. Like there's so much that's on the panel right now that like I connect to. And at the age of 12 was when I really, 11, 12, was when I really knew that, you know, there was something different about me that I couldn't speak to. You know, being the oldest child, you know, growing up in a Trinidadian household, there was a lot, yeah, Trini Passe. There was a lot, there was a lot of pressure put on me to perform in a certain way from my brother and sister who followed me. And as a result, I found myself disconnecting from my family without actually ever having spoken to them, right? And thank you for that, because that like, and I created very close personal friendships and relationships with friends. And to this day, my friends have always ranked, and maybe not as much anymore, but you know, up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I really connected with even my mother about a lot of this stuff, my friends have all been, you know, the net that caught me, you know, when I couldn't. And I've created some amazing things, and and I can say that I can attribute a lot of that to the people that I, you know, was able to call family that weren't actually blood. And, you know, especially when the time came for me to tell like my family members and whatnot, I mean, for the past 10 years, I hadn't spoken to my father because I made up a story about how, you know, he was not here for me, you know, without him ever actually having said it. And I connected with him this year, you know, last year when I turned 29, and it was, you know, I was just grateful because there was something that had shifted in me that allowed me to open up to him that hadn't been there for, you know, 12 plus years, 20 years almost. I'll be 30. So it's like, you know, I'm grateful for the bonds that I've created, that I've shared, that, you know, have been how I've been able to wake up and move forward and progress. And so, you know, yes, my family has been amazing, you know, up until now, like understanding, with the exception recently, I guess, of my sister. But I'm not without the people who were like really there. So
Thank you. You
Thank you.
are my friend. Y'all like that? Okay, anybody else? Yes.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Otis. I have kind of a unique story when it comes to allies. I recently found out that my mother had a older son when I actually talked to her about my sexuality. And when we both exchanged our secrets, it was almost like, okay, so now you have this older son and you're about to replace me. That's just great. Thanks a lot. And it wasn't really anything like that. It was just kind of one of those, we had a moment and then we reacted because she was also going through chemotherapy. as well too. So I'm like, I'm thinking I'm about to lose her. She's just dropping somebody into my life that first off made me realize the power of God, because I always prayed for an older brother. And when I was 6, I asked my mother, did somebody die in our family? She said, why do you say that? I said, I feel like somebody is missing. But that was the same day that my brother found out that he was adopted. So as she wanted to be the one to institute everything, but as a concerned son, I'm like, you're going through chemotherapy. I don't know if he's going to reject you. You didn't reject me, so I don't want you to deal with what I had been playing in my head about having this conversation with you. So I picked up the phone and called, and so it was a little intense. And when we finally met each other, we instantly hugged. I keep the picture in my phone and everything else just to remind myself of that moment. And then he looked at me, he was like, okay, I know that we're blood brothers and everything else, but there's something else you're not telling me either. I was like, I already went through this conversation with my mother. I'm not going through it with him. So we got to talking. He kept trying to push me for the information. He pushed me for the information till one night we got drunk. He said, we're going out to the bayou. And we fought because he wanted me to tell him I am gay. And that's all he wanted to hear. And when we sat up there, and I tell you, we fought for 2.5 hours, throwing branches at each other, everything else. I mean, that's just warrior spirits. And I finally said it. He just dropped everything, and we didn't realize that when we came out from the bayou, we just dropped in the middle of the street, and everybody was like, what is going on? Because we just hugging and crying. They're like, that's the type of love I want to see. I mean, just, really fighting and everything else. And so I'm like, that is my brother. I prayed for him and everything else. And it was just really odd to, instantly become friends after being raised apart from 35 years. And so my sister, who I have known for almost 35 years, not my blood sister, but, someone that was always my confidant, she always knew and everything else. So when we talked to her on the three-way, and she said, you finally told him and everything else? And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't even talk to you about it. She was like, I already knew that, but I'm going to tell you. But she's like, but I'm going to tell you because of the fact that, she's like, the only thing I'm upset about is the fact that I've known you all this time and you have yet to let me in, so I can tell you that because of you, I went into human resources, and she was working at Granger. She was like, there was so much work that needed to be done within the community because you didn't speak to me. I needed a bigger stage, so she joined a Fortune 50 company as a global inclusion for diversity. So she's responsible for London, Shanghai, Dubai, all of those places. And the first thing she did, she was like, we're going to talk about some global gay issues and everything else because I never want anyone to experience what you thought you had to and didn't talk to me about it.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Well,
Can I say one thing? Real quick? Can I say one thing real quick? One thing that I left out, and I was just mentioning it to Teak, is that we also in our community don't tend to talk about therapy. And I want to say that therapy is very helpful, especially for LGBT youth. When we all talk about our community and being in religiosity and all this stuff, it does affect you. It affects everyone that's around you, and sometimes you're not the problem, of course, but other people around you, the way they react to you could be an issue. And so I really recommend people see a counselor or go to group sessions, therapy.
Thank you for that.
Or like Racine said, honey, you do your research and you find out who the girls that paved the way for us. And Racine knows one of my dearest friends who is Ann Allure, and my sister sitting right here, Miss London, and Ayanna Christian sitting over here. We have a very strong knit, I call it family, but I learned so much and have been mentored so much from the girls that have paved the way. And there's so many more that I could mention, like Kevin Aviance, and I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but those are definitely some ways to just be mentored and when you have questions, opposed to going to the regular crisis centers and all those type of places. It's better to learn from those that have actually been there, who've been in the trenches, who've paved the way. Of color, exactly.
I think it's so fitting that we're actually getting into conversations that you guys are bringing up about how other people can help us and how we should be seeking out that support and that help. And, you know, we know that having solidarity has been great in our lives, strengthens us. I want to turn for a minute now to talk a little bit about what it's like to be an ally and to hear a little bit from the other perspective of that, from the allyship side. And I want to bring in Mother Letman over here. She's been sitting over here quietly on her throne, Sharon Letman, who is the fearless leader of the National Black Justice Coalition and a co-sponsor of this event as well. Talk to, just now, you know you only got a couple of minutes, and I'm gonna have to take the microphone from you if we. But go on ahead and share with us from an organizational perspective, sure, but also just personally, what allyship looks like from your lens.
Thank you, Aisha. Is this mic on?
Yep.
Thank you, Aisha. When Wade Davis calls you and says you have an assignment, you just gotta own it and jump in the trenches and decide you have an assignment. 5.5 years ago was a pivotal moment for me when I was in another organization for almost 10 years that focused on civil rights, civil liberties, was one of the first progressive organizations to come out and support a marriage. But internally, we were divided into 3 houses: the black house, the gay house, and the atheist house. And agnostic, excuse me. And because they don't call me an atheist. And I'm like, I was Florida based, and I'd come up and I was like, why are we so divided? You know, we deal with these civil liberties. We're a Supreme Court focused organization. You know, I would just ask questions. I didn't think I was offending that person to say they were an atheist. I was like, explain to me, you know, what the cause is. How do we get in the movement? And then I learned about DCPC. And I was a Florida girl. And for me, we were just as hypocritical being divided into 3 houses. And we got a pass as black people that we didn't have to do LGBT issues because we were doing faith-based work. And at the time, it's too long of a story, but fast forward, when we started, the right wing was really focused on LGBT, immigration, abortion rights, and I just wanted to do something different. My heart was there. But when I went deeper into my soul, especially being at NBJC, which was a calling, you know, this is a privilege. I don't even subscribe to the term ally. Ally is a little too passive for me. I'm an advocate, and I'm a sister in the movement. And I respect allies, I respect people, but you cannot anoint yourself an ally. Somebody who is LGBTQ, SGL has to give you the privilege and the title of being an ally. So for me, ally has many issues. At least ally is better than calling somebody straight. Please stop giving people that kind of hierarchy and calling them straight. Don't ever refer to me as straight. I'm as queer can be. And so when I even think about being an advocate, it is really a responsibility. It's a responsibility to step back while others step forward. It's a responsibility to listen and not always have something to say. You know, and what I love most about celebrating our work at the National Black Justice Coalition is my motto is own your power. And we live every day with a conversation as an organization about own your power. And it's just a miracle. This family, this is love, the only reason I'm even here. I just came back off of 3 weeks of my mom having a scare with cancer, having to go into immediate surgery, had to leave Creating Change in Denver, total hysterectomy. I'm an only child. My father's deceased. Everything, my life just stopped. I also have a 15-month-old son who's extremely quiet in this room. That is so amazing. Where's my boo? And having to leave him for 2 weeks, look at my baby. Having to leave him for 2 weeks for the first time in my life to take care of my mom because I just couldn't do both. It was my community, it was this community, it was us that held me down. Every single day, every minute of the day, somebody was texting me, somebody was calling me, somebody was checking on my family, somebody was constantly in that space. But today I shut down, it was just too much. And my sitting service fell through. I had this on the books, worked you know, just like a soldier in the trenches, and said, I just have to miss it. I just can't do it. And Wade called me and was like, hey, I got another assignment for you. And I was like, Lord, I was just about to text you to say I can't even be here. And he really was like, work it out. He really, in his in solidarity way, he was like, you work it out. And I immediately started calling people, and Miss Racine, I just feel like this whole room needs to hug again, just even thinking about some of the stuff that you shared. And I reached out to my uncles, my baby's uncles, Vinton and Isaiah, and I put it in their hands. I put it in God's hand. I said, brothers, you know, y'all are my front line. I don't want to impose on you. This is the situation. Wade gave me another assignment. They already had gotten the word I wasn't coming, and they were like, what's the problem? Bring him. I was like, no, you don't understand, he's 15 months. And one was like, his biological clock is working, but I won't call him out. And the other one was like, I love babies. And I'm like, dude, this is not a space for that. And, you know, I don't mix that. And immediately I stopped in my tracks, and I said, this is love, Wade. I said, this is love, Darnell. And I said, why not? I mean, I only live an hour away, and I only needed to get my whole life in order. But you know, the mission called, and I'm here. And just so you know, that other people have other identities, I'm a little self-endowed, so these high chairs don't work with my derriere. So I'm sitting low, but you know, just because I need to. And but the most beautiful thing about our community and the work that I get to do every day is serve you all. Is to hear all the challenges. I'm so appreciative that somebody brought mental health in this room, because that's the whole country's issue. And I really think as a community, we have a responsibility to lead the charge. We have a responsibility to be loud and proud about our needs, about our health and wellness, about our social responsibility, that it's not just about it gets better. It must be better, and we're demanding it. And these are the things that we need to be whole, because just because you come out doesn't mean you divorce all your other identities. And all too important as a Black LGBTQ SGL community, we came out, all of a sudden we are only gay. Right. All of a sudden we are only trans. And all of a sudden we have no other identities. And especially with the revolution happening, and the revolution not looking like us, but yet the people who are coming out and taking fearless steps and really out front look like us, we have to declare our blackness. Jason, I thank you so much, because you were that icon that came out and says, I'm Black and gay. You started the change. And it's because of you, the President of the United States started seeing intersectionality. It's because of you. And we all had issues. I have the privilege of doing this space, but I measure these public policy changes, and I measure the times where we evolve. And when we evolved as being Black and gay, the president evolved with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you.
Mother. Y'all know what that, y'all was trying to commentate. Y'all was about to, somebody better get up and give me a little swam or something. Can't talk about the church and not talk about the ballroom scene up in here too. Because the ballroom scene is at church too. I want to turn to see, they about to get it started up in here. Feet up. To my dear brother, Michael Denzel Smith. Do y'all know Michael Denzel Smith? Do you know this name? So Michael is a writer at The Nation and a fellow there, and is also an author. And I can talk personal about him. We do a lot of work together. We started a group together called Brothers Writing to Live, which brought together cisgender and trans men to unravel sexism and to talk about the ways that we can work on ourselves. And he's been the perfect example of not an ally, but an accomplice. An accomplice, like willing to lose some shit. And I just, before offering him an opportunity to talk about why that's important, just give you much dap for all the work you do in the world in support of LGBT folk, in support of Black folk overall. So allyship, accomplishing, what does that mean to you?
Well, I don't want any special praise for treating people as people. You know, that goes with being human. To be an accomplice, to stand with any people that have been pushed to the margins because of their existence, because of their identity, comes with the responsibility of a political act. And any political act has repercussions. And so you have to be willing to accept those repercussions and know that they're going to come swift and hard on you. But there are also great rewards with that. And the rewards are acceptance and community and love. And I don't know anything more powerful than Black love. And I'm not going to close myself off to any opportunity to experience Black love, particularly from Black LGBT folks, because if it were not for some Black LGBT folks, I would not be sitting here today. For someone that has felt like he's pushed to the margins or not accepted, that's where I found acceptance and that's where I found love. I don't know who I would be and where I would be if it were not for Darnell, if it were not for Wade, if it were not for Hashim or Patrick or Aisha or Danielle. I wouldn't be who I am, and I love myself so dearly that I'm grateful for them for loving me and accepting me in. And I think that that's one of the more powerful things for me, is that I don't take I understand it as an invitation, and I take it seriously as an invitation, and I do not, you don't tread lightly with that.
Amen. I just feel like hugging. I just want to hug people. So clearly, the undertone and the overtone of all of these conversations has been faith, which is always powerful. Whenever Black folk get together, we tend to, and I always have to remind us that we're not all Black, Southern Baptist, Christian, Kojic, holiness, etc. But it is powerful, though, that spirituality is always in the room. And so I want to take a moment to turn to Reverend Cedric Harmon to actually talk to us a bit. It's been so much divisiveness around the Black church this and the Black church that, and the Black pastors, Eddie Long's running around doing all these different things, and that's the bane of the existence of Black LGBTQ people. Just break it down for us. Talk to us about a couple of things. One, the love that does exist there in the Black church, which despite all of the issues that come from the church, it's so interesting that so many of us are still connected to the culture, right? Talk about the power of that. And then a little bit about, how faith has gotten you through.
So, and you mentioned Eddie Long before I had to speak. That's just not right. So I began my morning this morning by playing the soundtrack to Dreams Girls. That's how I started my day. And there's this little bitty song in there that talks about it's more than you, it's more than me. We are a family. And that final lyric is, we are growing free. So freedom is not just inherently there. You grow towards it given the exigencies of our lives in this country. We grow towards it. And so the Black church, which I refer to as Black churches, because there's no singular Black church, is just like our community. It is a hodgepodge, a mix of complex differences and identities. There is no singular Black church. And even though roughly 80% of us claim some connection to some religious community, even among those that don't attend, 40% say that they have some relationship to the church. So we lie about our relationship with the church because we know we're supposed to be connected to the church or possibly connected. And even among our brothers and sisters who identify as humanists, because there are brothers and sisters and kindred and family who identify as humanists, recognize that there's some goodness, some love, some power, some force, some light, some divinity, some creator, whatever you want to call, some god or goddess that is present and we're connected to. So what I see is I've always known that there has been welcome and love and acceptance and even some levels of celebration in those churches. But let's not lie. As Malcolm X said, who taught you to hate yourself? Too often the answer to that is the church taught me to hate myself. I like that because, I am a preacher. The church taught us. The church taught us to lie, to wear masks, to be hypocrites, to love someone on Saturday night but deny them on Sunday morning. The church taught us a lot of things that aren't good, and families do that too. Families do that too. So sometimes you have to leave that place that was supposed to be the place of love in order to find genuine love. Create within yourself the strength to then challenge that place that did not provide it. So Many Voices works with people who are open to that conversation around learning and understanding the kindred and children that are already there that they too often overlook. It's not all dismissive, dislike, and hatred, but there is some dismissiveness, dislike, and hatred that we still have to work through. So that's what my organization does. We work with those folks to get them to the point where we're seeing shift and change. There's a pastor who recently in North Carolina, in a country town in North Carolina, who we've been working with, who recorded one of our videos, explaining his journey to acceptance. And he explained this and did not consider the cost. He had never preached about what he said on tape. So went back to the church and preached a message about all means all and whosoever really means whoever, LGBTQI inclusive. And he wondered if he would have members left, right? Well, after preaching a message that was fully inclusive and embracing, members of that country town church told him about sons and daughters who were LGBTQ, same gender loving queer folks that he had never heard about before. And that member, that visitor that came every Sunday and left early, sent a Christmas card, said, "Thank you for preaching that because my partner and I love you." The message is, it's not all bad when you tell the truth. This Is Love campaign gives us an opportunity to do some truth telling that has necessarily gone not been happening soon enough. So, truth comes on both sides. The church has to tell the truth. It's messed up. It's not lived up to its standard. And we have to tell the truth. We have not held the church accountable. Some of us leave and go other places. But when you're truly free, free people, free people. And there are some people in the church that need to be set free as well. And your witness frees them. Our witness frees them. Our queer identity gives them the very gift that they've been searching for in all the wrong places. We are powerful. And I think that the stories that I've read in the Ebony magazine talk about a transformative, radical love. This kind of love changes the world. The love in this room changes the world. So don't hold it hostage. Set it free, because we are growing free.
And now I'm going to take an offering. Y'all supposed to laugh. We do need an offering, though. Ain't nobody laugh at that shit when I said that. Nobody had nothing to say. There was no ways and all that. Yeah, right. See?
Take Patrick's hat and go ahead and pass that around.
I want to give our final word to Patrick Ian Polk. And you started with you, and we want to end by offering you. That was a beautiful clip of a film, wasn't it? And another way of showing love is showing up to the theaters to support this brother. So go on Twitter now and be like, we saw a clip of Blackbird and it's really, really good. We want to support this. But that clip captured so much, the essence of really what we're talking about now. And I'm wondering if you can talk about the film, but also the ways in which it captures black love, which that clip does in a really wonderful way.
Well, I guess, as I said, I grew up in Mississippi, and, I was lucky enough to grow up with sort of the freedom to explore the world intellectually. So I was allowed to go to church, any church that I wanted to go. I went to Methodist church with the best friend for a while. I went to Catholic church with an aunt. I would go to Baptist church with my grandmother.
And so nothing was forced on me. And then as I became an adult, I settled into sort of I guess I would call myself an agnostic, sort of, but I'm spiritual, and I do kind of believe, but I don't go to church every Sunday. But what I was really struck by when I read Blackbird first was the idea that, and all throughout my 20s, when I was a little bit more rebellious, and growing up in the South and being black, I had lots of friends who were very religious and clinging to religion as gay adults. And I would often ask when I was dating in my 20s, and I would ask, one question I'd ask is, are you religious? And then, they would answer. And then the second question I would ask is, how do you reconcile your religion and your sexuality? And they would say the most ridiculous things to me, like, I believe homosexuality is a sin like other sins, and God forgives me. Ridiculous shit. And I'd be like, listen, if you really believe it, then you shouldn't be on this date with me. You should be really trying to renounce this, So what I always loved about Randy's story in the movie is that he really believes. He really believes, and he is trying to live by the word and trying to figure this out. And so, the movie departs from the book in a lot of different ways. As I said, the book is set in the 70s. He lives in an all-white town. In my movie, it's pretty much an all-black town, even though his love interest is a white guy. And he's in the black church. So I really wanted to explore how does that dynamic affect young gay people, young gay black people today. But at the same time, I wanted to be respectful of religion, because I do think, as you said, we have to hold the church accountable, and we have to drag the church into the 21st century. And so how do we do those things? Well, we have to talk about it. We have to have the conversation, because I grew up in an era where somehow I instinctively knew it from a very, very young age that I was gay, but I also knew that it wasn't something I could talk about. And eventually you settle into this thing of, well, one day when I graduate and move away from here, I'm going to do this. And I'll never forget getting on the plane to go to college, and I don't know where this came from, but saying to myself, when I set foot off this plane, from this day forward, every person that I meet is just going to know that I'm gay. And then that's just what happened. There was never a coming out. I never told my family. They just kind of got it. And I just kind of quietly dared them to not be okay with it. And my sort of goal, and one of the reasons why it was important for me to do this film, is because, I have a brother who's 20 years young, 19, 20 years younger than I am. I have a cousin who's younger, who's here. And I wanted the world to be different for them. When my brother was growing up, I made a point to expose him to things. I would take him on trips. I'd take him to New York. I'd take him to Broadway shows. I'd take him to London. I'd make sure he was around gay people, and he could visually see that and see them being affectionate. And so it was normalized for him. When my cousin was in college and came to New York to audition for something or interview for something, and I took him to dinner, and he came out to me. And the first thing I told him was, don't tell your mother. Yet. I said, don't tell your mother just until you're fully on your own and can support yourself, because I don't think she would cut you off, but I don't think she can handle it just yet. And I was shocked that I would say that to, because I grew up with all this audacity, and I was just gay and didn't care who knew. But every situation is different, and you have to accept it. And his mother, my aunt, I love her. She loves me. She's very religious. I've seen her move. When I first came out, I used to get, when I was in college in my early 20s, I used to get a lot of, scripture and that type of stuff. Well, I hope one day you come to this, and you push back against that gently, and eventually it just changes. The thing that really amazes me is how we often make more of it
then we don't give our families the chance to show up because we don't believe that they will. And so we grow up and we move away. We don't share these things. We keep it quiet. There's sort of a quiet acceptance. Everyone knows that, Uncle James and his friend are coming to the family reunion, but no one will talk about the fact that, and this still goes on. I have a best friend from high school who's been with his partner going on 20 years, and his family, no one's ever said it. The boyfriend doesn't come home with him when he comes home for Christmas and vice versa, but if one of them is sick or in the hospital, one's mother knows to call the other one and talk, so everyone knows, but they're just not talking about it. So, what I hope to do and what I try to do is just to have people, encourage people to talk about these issues. One of the biggest things growing up for me was never seeing images of myself on screen, never seeing anything black or gay anywhere. There was nothing to go on, nothing. Sometimes I don't often think about this stuff, but sometimes when I'm forced to sort of look at the career and what have you done and what have you accomplished, I have no clue where any of that came from because there was no model, there was no, I had Spike Lee, but he wasn't making gay films. And so that's when I realized it really is a true calling because there's no reason why this gay black boy from Hattiesburg, Mississippi should be making films with Oscar winners about little gay boys in the church. It's just, there's no rational reason why that should be. But I'm encouraged by how far we've come and how far we continue to come. The idea that someone like Jason can be out and playing in the NBA is just, it's major. You think about it, it's really simple, but it's so major. It changed the world. It really changed the conversation in a powerful way. And so I sit here now and I see this group. I see my cousin who eventually did come out to his mother, and she's fine. The world did not end. And I'm encouraged. Blackbird it's a tough movie for me, because it is sort of the realization of this lifelong dream from, reading this book, which was the first time I'd read anything culturally, that was black and gay, the first time. So to now have that book be turned into a movie and to see it coming to the screen and to see wonderful actors like Isaiah and Monique. And the last thing I'll say is this. When I went to Hattiesburg to start prepping the film and we were casting that lead character, and we were seeing all the actors in Hollywood that sort of could fit that age range, all the ones that would even dare audition. And some of the ones who auditioned, they would drop out, my spirit told me, and I was there would literally be actors who I know are gay in real life who will be at the club and whatever, but come to me saying, oh, I can't do it, And then we found this boy. He was a sophomore at the University of Southern Mississippi, sent in an audition at the suggestion of a friend, never acted a day in his life. And he is that character. And he started telling me these stories about how when I came out to my parents, they invoked the church. They took me to the church. They tried to get me to change. It was all of these things. And now he's openly gay. And he's graduating in May with his degree in theater. He's starring in a major motion picture, and he will go on to be whatever. But he's openly gay from the beginning, and that in itself is just leaps and bounds above sort of where we were. So all of this is just kind of encouraging, and it encourages me as an artist to kind of keep fighting to make these films that I often think nobody really wants to see, and no one's paying money, and I struggle as an independent filmmaker, but I'd much rather be doing this than some asinine comedy that doesn't mean anything. So I appreciate the support. I appreciate being invited here. I appreciate what everyone here is here to do. The thing I will ask you is that when this film comes out, April 24th in theaters, that you just remember us and encourage your friends, via social media and what have you, encourage them to check us out. We have a Twitter, Blackbird Film, BLKBIRD Film, Facebook and all that stuff. You can find us. I'm out there as well, and we have a trailer online. Just encourage people to check it out, because this film, more than anything else that I've done, is the one that I think, our entire community needs to see. So hopefully they will. Thank you
so much. So we're at our close. And before we, Teak and Wade, I want to give thanks to Aisha Moody Mills, who was our wonderful co-host. And we also want to give thanks to Sharon Letterman Hicks on the side, who hosted us through NBGC. And also to Isaiah, where are you, Isaiah, for doing all of the wonderful work behind the scenes. And also to Jamal Lewis here, who did all of those promo materials that initially got up.
Thanks,
This young brother
Jamal.
did that. Raise your hand, Bristol. And to our interpreters, we want to thank them for coming in last minute, even
we want to welcome Samantha to come up here for a second, please, please, please. Samantha Master from HRC. And we want to present you with some flowers, because you are our angel. You really broke your back to take care of us.
Thank
and
you
make
so
sure that
much.
this event happened. And we just want to say thank you. We are truly grateful and humbled, because this event would not have happened without Samantha. Literally me calling, saying, please do this, and you said yes and kept working. So thank you so much. Yes.
So I want to share this with all of you. So I just want to share a quick story. Mommy, would you please stand up? Yeah, I got you. Please stand up, Mommy. Well, thank you. I was going to do that, but I see, obviously, I didn't need to give an introduction or tell my story. Thank you. So when I remember coming out to my mother. She sat me down at a Famous Days when I was like 18, and after I'd been hanging around all of my butch lesbian friends, and boys had stopped calling the house for about 5 years. So she said, "Are you gay?" And it was really tense, and our relationship was really strained. I went off to college, found community with a bunch of queer folks, my best friend in the audience, and it was tough. It was really tough. And so when she saw you on MHP yesterday, she called me and said, "Well, I think that's at that place you work. Can I go?" And I had just gotten out of the hospital. I literally, I was like really attempting to figure out how I was gonna make it here. And she said, "Can I go?" And I knew I had to do everything I could to be here, to be with her in this moment. And so, thank you. Thank you.
We also want to thank all of our partners, from Sharon, MBJC, from Palatini Media, Daniela and Aisha, from Feministing.com to HRCF to GLAD, to all these wonderful organizations that just kept saying yes. But also thank you all for showing up as well. It is truly a blessing that you all came out today. We're truly honored. To all of our panelists, I'm just so very, very grateful. I've seen Blackbird. It is fucking amazing. So please, please, please see it. And I don't curse often, except for around this one. But again, thank you all so much for coming out.
Yeah, thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. This has been such an amazing experience, and everybody hugging and singing and things, because we feel this in this room with so much love. And I encourage you all of you to stand up in that unconditional love and love with no bounds, and push your people too. We talked about that earlier, how we haven't giving people enough space to love us because we're so scared. But we gotta push them, gotta challenge them. You got to love me. I'm gonna stand here and you got to do it. And a lot of times they will. So just just keep loving each other. You know, stand up in it and keep loving each other. Thank y'all so much for being here.
Last thing, our next initiative that they don't know about is going to be around mental health. So, thank you for all for mentioning that earlier. So we'll be reaching out to our same partners as well to talk around mental health.
Wade, Darnell, and Teak, come down here, please. We can't close before understanding what happens. This is how grassroots movement gets started. This is how It Gets Better got started. We owe it to these three brothers that started something from a social media perspective, decided they must do something on the ground. We have almost 200 people in this room. Every single one of you pull out your phones. Every single one of you tweet what you just experienced. Every single one of you take your picture and fill up "This is Love." More importantly, when you leave here, before you even, wherever you go, on Metro, get in your car, whatever, you sit there and you tag every single person in your Facebook and on your Twitter, and you call out 10 people, and you say, I remember your story you shared with me. Please post it on This Is Love. Hashtag This Is Love. I would be remiss not to lift this up. I want to see hundreds of thousands of posts. I want to see hundreds of thousands of posts. This is raw. This is beautiful. We're all bureaucrats. We're part of Gay Inc. That's all wonderful. We love what we do.
Right.
But when brothers take their heart and call upon us bureaucrats to help make it happen, we have to lift up their innovation. We have to lift up their initiative. But we are lackluster as a people. We'll come for the celebs. We'll come for the. You have work to do. I'm giving you a call to action. We got all y'all in database. They're going to send a follow-up, but we know they don't like to read, so I want to prepare them that they're going to get a directive, a call to action, because by the end of this week, I want to see no less than 10,000 posts. And then we're going to come back with the second charge. Because by far, the demographics are out. I'm tired of quoting it. Aisha, you know what I'm talking about, that we are the largest percentage of people who are out by race. Where we at? So this is a medium, and that's people who self-identify. So this is a medium that has been created that is not about go do a lobby day, that's not about us policy wonks. This is just about love. Celebrate your outness. Celebrate those who love you unconditionally. Hashtag This Is Love, and let them see how we need it done as black folk. Show them our black love. Thank you, brothers.
One second, though. So before we go, y'all, one of the things that I do take very seriously is this idea, I often say we're in this protest moment where we go to protest and, you got your fist up like this and you don't even know the person's name that you just stood next to the entire time. So one can't have a radical movement without experiencing radical love. So I really would encourage you to talk to somebody you do not know in this room today. Ask somebody their name, if nothing else. And really give like the real type of hug that you feel deep down inside. And get somebody's number. Well, I was about to say get somebody's number. Get somebody number 2. Because some of y'all real cute and stuff. But really, really use this opportunity to build connections. Thank you all so much. You want to do a selfie? Yes. With the panel? Oh, can everybody, if you can stand, We're going to do a big old selfie.